So how's everybody doing today, huh? Everybody doing good?
Good.
That's good.
Kind of bored.
Yeah, same here.
Go.
You gotta get a faster system here. So anyways, the Social Engineering Toolkit's an open source tool that I wrote a little while ago. And this new version has something pretty cool in it. In traditional Java applet attacks, where the victim actually goes and clicks on the website and hits run, traditionally speaking, what the Social Engineering Toolkit would do is download an executable and then pull it back and then execute it. And generally, the executable, the PE file was heavily obfuscated and everything else. But the problem that you ran into was antivirus vendors, especially as SET gained more and more popularity. Every time I have a release, they release a signature update within 2 or 3 days or so to detect the different versions of the executables I'm delivering or how I'm obfuscating the Metasploit exploits or whatever. And most of the time I'm just scrambling the PE or encrypting it or doing different methods. But in the new version, I finally got frustrated enough with the antivirus companies. I know it sounds horrible because I'm on the good side, but it's frustrating because they're doing it to a tool that's actually legitimately used for good people. And so what I ended up doing was there was a guy that by the name of Matthew Graver who figured out a way of leveraging straight up PowerShell to inject shellcode straight into memory. And so what I did is I rewrote the Java applet from scratch essentially, put a lot of functionality and backup mechanisms in place. And what it does now is as soon as you click run on that Java applet, it injects shellcode straight into memory without ever touching disk. So you don't have to worry about antivirus anymore ever again. And so I'll just show it to you real quick. Not have to worry about signatures or all that crummy stuff. So I'm just setting it up. It's going to do anything for you. Ignore all this. And what's kind of cool, I don't know if I explained this before, but the way that about 2 years ago, when you signed a Java applet, you would sign it as whatever you wanted to, like Google or whatever. And when it popped up, the publisher name would show up as Google or Microsoft or whatever. And so about a year and a half ago, or about a year ago, after SET started getting a lot of popularity, Java released an update so that the publisher name shows up as a big unknown. And so what I did is I registered a company in the state of Ohio called Verified Publisher LLC and bought a code signing certificate. Why isn't it not? There we go. So when you go to the website, you get an email that looks legitimate that I cloned. And they get this Java applet warning. It's funny because, I don't know if you noticed, but it says publisher here, it says verified publisher, and it says the application signature has been verified if you want to run this application. And automatically always trust it, which is kind of cool. So, oops, not good. And so what happens when you hit the always trust it is every time you visit that website from now on, it automatically launches without the Java applet popping up. So it's like you can hit them multiple times if you need to. So as soon as you hit run, over on the back end here, we get our interpreter shells, but it never touches disk. So it detects if Windows Vista or Windows 7 is installed, it looks for the PowerShell directory, calls power memory, and the way it does it is kind of neat. So I think it's neat. Thank you. So you look at the source, what I ended up doing was what I do is I pass a parameter in the HTML code, and it's generally different. And all of this is alphanumeric shellcode. And what ends up happening is it gets loaded into the Java applet. The Java applet then parses this into normal shellcode, and then runs the executable in memory, essentially without ever having to touch disk. So it calls PowerShell and a bunch of other code, and then it injects it into memory. You no longer have to worry about PowerShell anymore. I'm sorry, antivirus. So that was a cool new one. And then the second thing I've been working on is, does anyone remember Fast Track? A few people? Fast Track was one of the first programs that I ever really wrote in Python. I kind of picked it up on an airplane. And so I started writing Fast Track, which is a way to automate penetration testing and exploits. And so now I rewrote Fast Track from scratch. So there's not a line of code that's the same in the prior version of Fast Track that there is now. I used a lot of the core libraries that I built in the set to automate a lot of things. And so in the Fast Track menu, you can do, like one of my favorites is the SQL Brooder. but I've rewritten that so it's its own customized load balanced, multi-threaded port scanner, as well as its own custom written SQL database connection string. So we can do all that. I just want to show you real quick. Let me get my machine up. What this does is it goes out and looks for SQL servers to try to find a weak SA password, and then once it finds it, it leverages the XP command shell store procedure to then take a binary, convert it to hexadecimal, drop it on an underlying operating system, and use PowerShell to convert it back to a binary for us, so you can compromise the system that way.
Say that again a little more slowly.
Sorry.
He breaks it.
Things die.
Thanks.
No, 131.
I got that much.
All right, let me just get to that part. Okay. So what happens is we install SQL Server. It installs with either integrated mode, mixed mode, or Active Directory authentication. And what ends up happening is if they select mixed mode or integrated off, you have to specify a SQL Server account. And a lot of times, like, it's installed by default or through packages, and they don't have a password, or it's a weak password. It's really easy to guess. I mean, anybody here do penetration testing for a living? Is there any of us that haven't found a weak SA password when we do a penetration test? It's like the de facto thing that we go to attack an organization. I mean, whenever we plug into the network, that's the first thing we go after because it's like the easiest thing to nail. That or JBoss or Apache Tomcat or whatever else. But what ends up happening is once they have the SA password, you basically are running as a full administrator on that actual system itself because with Windows you have the default store procedure called the XP command shell store procedure, which allows you to execute underlying operating system commands. So it's kind of like having a command shell, for lack of a better sense. The problem you have with that is how do you deploy a binary through SQL, then through the underlying operating system, and have it connect back to you so you actually fully compromise that system. And a lot of times, you know, you can add a local admin account or whatever, but what if there's no ports available except for 1433 or whatever? And so what SET does is it takes a binary and it converts it to pure hexadecimal. And so you have this big string of hex that's your executable blob, and it just echoes it onto the underlying operating system, and then it calls PowerShell to that file that it created to convert it back to a binary for you. So there's a few methods that you can use, but PowerShell has been kind of the most preferred one. Josh, I think you wrote that part, didn't you? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I can say I contributed to the set.
That's right.
That consistency.
So what's going to happen now is it's creating the payloads, converting it to hex, and then we're deploying it to the victim machine right now. So we're attacking our victim machine. And nothing happened. Yeah. Oh, it's because I figured it out. So it's going to do the same thing, and then it's going to deploy the binary. So right now we're sending initial stager. This is just a hexadecimal representation of it. Takes a second. Looks really cool though. That's the reason I did it. I mean, I put the green and the white to make it look cool. And then you'll see the second stage hit in a second. It's almost done. The second stage will hit, and that'll be the rest of our payload. And then it converts it. So there's the rest of it.
That looks a little bit
Yeah.
It looks like Hollywood hacking.
And then you see where you got an interpreter shell and you compromise the system to there. So some kind of neat additions to the new version of SET. Now the second tool that I've been writing is called Artillery, which has anybody used OSEC? HIDS, the OSEC stuff? Somewhat similar to that, but I've combined a little bit of different things to it. The way that Artillery works is it's specific for Linux. However, I'm working on the version right now. It's really in alpha stages. I just wrote this on a couple of airplanes. And so it's in development stage now, but we'll have a version. I'll have a version out for Windows here shortly. So it'll be both Windows and Linux independent, so you can run both with the same code base. And what it does is it's kind of a file integrity monitoring solution slash honeypot slash active response slash a bunch of other stuff for your machine. And what it does is, if you look at the config file, so what will happen is, you see these ports here, these are just different ones that I put in, but they're common ports. So 135, 445, 22, 1433, so RDP, alternate FTP, FTP, VNC, SMTP, DNS, POP3, 306 is MySQL. 1723 is, what's 1723? I don't know, remember. Anyways, commonly attacked ports. And what will happen is when you run artillery, it spawns up all these ports for you to make them look like they're open and legitimate. And what it also does too is it monitors whenever there's a connection to those ports. And so when it detects a connection on those ports, it sends them some random garbage between like 500 random unique characters to like 50,000 random unique characters. So it looks like a pretty crazy protocol. And then it disconnects them and then it bans them. So it really messes with people's heads. And that's the whole point. And so it does that. It'll also detect SSH brute forces. It does file integrity monitoring, so it'll give you, if you give it directories, like for example, right now in the default, it monitors var, www, and etc, which are the two main directories that get narrowed. And so if there's any changes in permissions or in access levels or to the file itself, it notifies you and emails you the alerts, or it'll append them to a log that you can then pipe to something else. I'm working on syslog right now too, so that'll hopefully be in. So it monitors the two directories or whatever you specify, and then it'll let you know if there's been any modifications. So as an attacker compromises, say, WordPress or whatever, gets into the local file system, changes some permissions, or appends some extra data to it, it uses SHA-512 to basically database and scheme the whole directory structure, and then if anything changes to it, it notifies you and then alerts you. So that's kind of cool. It also, let's see. It also does, I talked about the SSH brute forcing. Missing one. Oh, it also monitors, here's the monitor here. It'll actually check certain files, folders for insecure configurations in Linux. So for example, if you're running PHP, it'll check the different versions. It'll check to see if you're running the secure configurations around PHP. It'll check your SSH configurations to make sure you're not running in default ports. Things that are common things for us and as attackers would try to exploit. So it's kind of an all-in-one type thing. It's free, obviously. You can download it from my website, which is SETmaniac.com, and it has all of it built into it. But I just wanted to show you a demo of it. So just to install it, all you do is run Python install.py, and it asks you, do you want to have Artillery automatically install new versions of it, so automatically go and download and pull the latest. If you trust my repo to run on your Linux server, then you're more than welcome to. It's up to you. I trust myself, so I'll go ahead and yes. And I just got to check it out first, but hang on. I don't have internet access, so I'm going to hatch it in there. So then when it runs, if I do netstat, you can see I have all these ports running here. So it's got all these ports basically acting as a honeypot. And if I connect to something with it, what's my IP address? Hang on. I just do 22 or something. You can see here it sends just a bunch of random data back to me, and then it just closes the session, and then it bans them, so now I can no longer connect to this person anymore. It looks real funky. I mean, I tried making it look like a normal protocol. And so if I try to connect back, I'm basically blacklisted, and I have no idea. And just to give an example, so SecManiac generates about 45,000 hits per week, and DerbyCon hits about, I don't know, 8,000 per week. And on SecManiac, I have over 5,900 people banned, and on DerbyCon, I have about 1,300 banned. So, you know, decent clip of people. It's funny because you can see the guys coming from the same block, and you can tell they get pissed after a while because they only touch 80. And then I have a web application firewall that redirects to the saxophone guy. Have you ever seen the saxophone guy? Anyway, so every time you try to hack my website, it gets really, really annoying. So, messes with them. It's the best way to do it. But that's what I'm working on right now, and that's the latest version. I think I'm still in alpha. I mean, I started working on it probably about a month and a half ago, and been trying to commit to it about once a week. So new versions are out pretty much once a week or so. And my ultimate goal is to have it pretty much stable, work on Windows and Linux. And there's a couple things that I'm kind of kludging together. Like right now, I'm not using difflib in Python, which I need to be using. So I need to rewrite that portion, but a few other things. But for the most part, it's working pretty good right now. And actually, a lot of people are using it. I've already had about 8,000 downloads of it so far. So not a bad clip for just doing it. So, any questions?
How does it differentiate, you know, if somebody connects to AD, how does it differentiate between an attacker and normal traffic?
Well, I don't, so it's up to you to configure what ports you have open, but
Okay,
if it detects a port's open, it won't bind to that port. It'll just stop, it won't bind to it, it'll just stop itself and then won't bind to port 80. So 80 would still be a viable attack vector. But if you're looking at how attackers actually, you know, try to profile your organization or infrastructure, you know, this basically will go through and it will stop any of those major things that will report back to you. So if you say you ran it on, you know, all of your inside Windows machines, dear God Almighty, I mean, having a pen tester or hacker break into that, it would take them forever and he'd be banned anyway. So same thing goes for, you know, on your Linux machines.
Especially
Again.
if you pulled the bands.
What's that?
Especially if you pulled the bands between the computers.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing that I'm working on. I actually started working on the development for it, but I'm having a server infrastructure model, so it actually sends the correlated data back to the server. And then what you can do is you can actually push out real-time alerts to the other artillery servers to let them know that, you know, this one's been attacking and basically blacklist them for the rest of them. So I've been working on that for like a multi-correlated attack, but that takes a long time. That's a question. Any other questions?
How long do you ban them for?
Forever. Why not? No, you can change it under, like if you want to get rid of it, you can just remove this from ban list and then it'll allow it back in. So I prefer to ban forever and then have them ask me for forgiveness later. So, any other questions?
Are you getting the packet, the data that's coming back when you're connected to a port? Is that, you said, I heard you say something about making it look like a real protocol. Are you getting like anything, are you saying like random or is it captures from?
It's random. Yeah, I'm just sending random garbage back to him. Like you go to.
It's parts of memory.
Yeah.
Essentially there.
See, I generate a random characters between 5 and 3,000, then I random it, and then I just send it back via socket. And one thing I've been very cautious of, like, I've been racking my brain about every attack vector I can possibly think of that could happen to it. So, like, for example, there was one that I thought about, which probably isn't possible, would be really cool, is the way that I monitor the SSH logs. You know, it opens up the file, it looks for, you know, brute force attempts and correlates that IP address from. I was wondering if there's a way to basically spoof it and make it look like a command as well as an IP address, so that you can do like an IP address and a command. And if I pulled that in, you know, I can maybe execute commands when I do something else. So I've been real
You
careful
might be able
on
to sanitize the input to only allow...
all inputs sanitized. I do validation of all IP addresses and everything else, and I don't make any major system calls. So, you know, attack vector-wise, it seems to be pretty solid. It's been on SecManiac, which is probably one of the most attacked websites that's probably out there right now, and it hasn't fallen. In fact, it's done a really good job of doing it. But I mean, I've been racking my brain for a long time and having other people hit it and a bunch of other stuff, and it seems very, very solid. So, and it's Python. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can really do with it. But go ahead.
Do you have the ability to whitelist IP addresses?
Yes.
What I would have is I would just spoof a packet from the local gateway router, stop it from talking to stuff off the network.
Yeah, and you can weather. The thing is with spoofing the IP packet, it has to be a stateful TCP, so it's not just a standard connect. So it'd have to be a negotiated TCP IP packet, which is a little bit harder to do. But yeah, you can whitelist here too. I should do UDP too. That'd be a nice idea. Do SNMP. That's easy.
Yeah.
Just using AirStream and just do another one, but you can whitelist. You can exclude certain directories. Like for example, say I was monitoring Etsy and I wanted, and something changed all the time. There's a lot of files that change in Linux, so you can exclude a couple of those. What else? Here's you can change the ports that it listens on. So if you want to do other ones that are common, you're more than welcome to. I think the limit of ports is 2300, and that's a Python limitation of socket binding. So I've tried to get around it, but unfortunately, it doesn't.
Okay, so the obvious question, Gmail.
What about it?
Well, you have Gmail in there, what's it used for?
Oh, that's for email alerts.
Oh,
So you can turn on email alerts that'll email to your website. Right now, it's just for Gmail only, but I'm adding SendMail support and I'm adding SMTP support, so that should be changing shortly. Gmail was just the easiest one because I already had the code for it on the airplane and I didn't have the internet. Email timer. So if you turn email timer on, what will happen is, say you're getting attacked by like 50 IP addresses and you're getting spammed by like 500 emails. What you can do is you can just turn that on and have it, alert with a bulk email every, 5 minutes or so. So it sends you just all of them wrapped up into one. You turn on how many times you want to SSH brute force the different types of attacks. So if you want 4 or 10 or whatever, and you can turn all these flags off. So if it's bothering you, you can turn it off. And if you want to auto update or not. So, any other
How often
questions?
does it auto-update? Or check?
That's a good question. I don't know. I have no idea, to be honest with you. I've heard that too. I think I check it. I don't know.
Should be every 2 hours.
Whenever Dave lands.
Well, that's what I mean.
Oh,
Yeah.
Just screen scrape his itinerary and
I don't remember.
whenever he lands on the ground.
I can add a frequency in there, so you can check it yourself. I didn't even think about it, but like I said, a couple airplane rides. Any other questions? Cool.
Any way to get them on all ports that aren't used?
The problem is it's a Python limitation that I haven't gotten around yet, and others have been experiencing it with socket binding. I think it's like 2,000 or something like that is the most that you can bind to via socket. So
Is that per program, or can you run like multiple programs and bind more?
you can run multiple programs and find more. I bet you don't want to be spawning separate child threads. I mean, it's just kind of a pain in the butt.
Oh, but it works.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, what I can do is I can add something that basically randomizes 2,000 different ports and maybe just does the common ones and then also adds additional ones. What I try to do is get a good clip of low-level ports and high-level ports. So, if you're scanning higher ranges, then you should be able to nab them. If you're scanning lower ranges, you should be able to nab them. So I really try to do a kind of a blended approach when it came to that. It's a good one, though. And if you want to see feature questions, let me know. Next time I'm on an airplane, I'll code it in, so. Any other questions? Cool. Okay, so I kind of